Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait.
And just like that, the Jets season and playoff hopes are in the hands of one Zach Wilson. Mike White not cleared by doctors to play Sunday against the Lions. This is the Can't Wait podcast, the Athletics Jets podcast. I'm Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt, our reporter for the Jets at The Athletic, and Marissa Dunn here producing as always. And this is as quickly as we've been able to react to breaking news, I think, ever, guys, because we had this scheduled for 11 a.m. And what time did this news break, Zach? Like 10:40?
Right before the press conference. So like 10:30. Yeah.
10:30. And I will tip my cap to you that I'm not wearing today, Zach, because me and Marissa were both like, you need some time. We could push this back an hour. We can do it a little later. And you're like, nope, let's get it on there. Let's react. So we are
fresh
doing
thoughts.
Here.
I haven't really sorted through my thoughts, and you're going to get them fresh on here. So
that's perfect. Yeah. And there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to kind of consider with this game. What
this beat,
means.
Man, this beat.
Are you, I think,
Oh
I mean,
God.
at what point do the
Deep
other
breath,
beat
Zach.
writers like, and I hate to use this, but I'll use this analogy, Marissa, like earning your pinstripes, right? Is the thing with the Yankees. I can't stand it. I hate it. But
that's
Zach, do you feel like you've earned your Jet stripes at this point as a beat writer?
I feel like when they talk about rookies late in the season, they're like, he's not a rookie anymore. Like, I feel like I've been hardened by the battles I've been in on this beat. I don't know. Like I got lulled into a sense of security that, you believe these guys I'm sure Mike White believed that he was going to play all week. I mean, we talked to him yesterday and he said there's no doubt in his mind. Maybe that was just like him convincing himself kind of thing in the end. But I just was not mentally I don't know. I just did not see this coming. Like I should have. I literally had a fan DM me on Instagram. I don't have his name in front of me, but he does deserve a shout out. He DM'd me a day or two ago saying, just calling it now, Zach Wilson starts Sunday, Mike White not cleared. I'm like, okay, whatever you say. And that certainly backfired. But yeah, I don't know. I did not see this news coming, especially because it came on to Adam Schefter. Sometimes this happens right before press conference. It'll get leaked to like Schefter or Rap Sheet. And none of us were looking for it. And I just have my tweet deck up. And I see the Adam Schefter tweet, and I told some of the reporters in the room, I'm like, Zach Wilson starting on Sunday. They're like, is that a real tweet? What? No, everybody's like, wait, what? So they clearly kept this close to the vest. They maybe were really believing that he was going to play, but yeah, I don't know. It's we have to completely change gears about how we feel about this game. I was fully ready to predict a pretty big win, and now I need to sort through it as we go through this pod, and by the end I'll come to my conclusion. But that's kind of where we're at. It's kind of where I'm kind of spinning right now. Like this is it's surprising and yeah, they're gonna look a lot different, and we're gonna really find out what these 3 weeks, which is not enough time. No matter what anybody says, if they really believe that he needed a reset, I don't think 3 weeks. Anyway, we'll get into all that, but those are my immediate, as you asked me what's going on, thoughts.
Well, that's one of the things I have here is is 3 weeks enough? But on top of that, I did want to bring this up. Sal has been so good at press conferences since the early season, right? Like he had a few famous slip-ups early in the season, but the receipt thing until maybe now looked like it was heading in a good direction. But I feel like he didn't have as much prep time today, and he threw this one out in defense of Zach Wilson. He said he's the same quarterback that once won 18 for 18 in a bowl game. Oh, that's just I mean, there's so many things wrong with that statement, right? Like
what bowl game? Football. I would love to know.
Right. Yeah, actually, that's a good
I think somebody said on Twitter it was like at the Idaho Potato Bowl or something. I don't know. I'll look it up while we're talking.
But players don't even play in bowl games anymore.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I don't have the full quote in front of me. I think he was more talking about he knows what Zach's capable of and things like that. Because I think that was part of his response to the question about which he even said was a fair question. If Zach had a reset and he had to, change his fundamentals and stuff, is 3 weeks enough? And he said that's a fair question. We think he's had good practice. I know practices aren't the same as the games, and Sal is fully aware that. I don't know if risk is the right word, because I don't know if you're not going to go to Flacco either. We had this whole discussion about how Zach needs to be the backup because you just can't roll out there with Flacco anymore. But yeah, that's the. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, the 3 weeks, like he's been going. I mean, he was in scout team, so he was going against the Jets defense in a lot of ways. But a lot of that is designed to like give them the looks that they're probably going to see on Sunday, kind of thing. He's been getting the first team reps this week. I don't know. We're really going to find out, I guess, what Zach's made of. I feel like I've been saying that a lot this year, but he's coming out cold. He hasn't, played in a game in a while. He hasn't even been active on game day since his last start. You know how some of his receivers felt about how the way he was playing.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly Elijah and Garrett Wilson, who have played really well since he went out. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting because his offense kind of opened up a bit with Mike White in there. He was getting rid of the ball quick when he was taking shots downfield when they were there, check downs, hitting the easy stuff. Like that's been a big emphasis since he became the starter. Mike White makes the easy look easy. Zach Wilson was making the easy look hard when he last played. So like we talked about when this first started and the idea that he wanted him to come back on the field, no matter how good he's looked in practice, for all we know, he's going to go out there and try and win the game every play again. Like we don't know that he's, especially now that they're still in the playoff hunt. This game is crucial for their playoff hunt. So there's pressure. There's going to be pressure on Mike White too. But there's so many like layers to this, and I'm sure we'll get into all of them, but there's the layer of, is he staying on the field now? If the goal is to get him on the field, you have him on the field now. So is he the starter the rest of the way? It's a short week with the Jaguars game coming up. Would you really throw Mike White out there after they probably only get like one real practice in this week? Do you do that? Like, is Zach, if he plays well, does he stay as the starter? If he doesn't play well, do they still roll with him anyway? If they like lose these games, like there's just like so many different paths that this can go now. It is fascinating, but it's, I get it if fans are worried right now because obviously Zach didn't really show much in his last games. And, Saleh tried making the point that they were 5-2 with him. And a lot of the things he did don't show up on the stat sheet, which, QB wins are not a real stat. I think that's been pretty well established. Like anybody who's watched the Jets, if you saw Mike White's record and Zach Wilson's record, that doesn't match with like the way they've played, like that, like how they've played, I guess. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. And the Lions are playing very well. Their defense is not great, but it's improved. They have Aiden Hutchinson. They have some pass rushers. The Jets O-line has struggled. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We have no idea what we're going to see on Sunday from Zach Wilson. It's more of a mystery than it was when he came back in week 4 against the Steelers and had that comeback in the fourth look terrible the first 3 quarters. Maybe that's what'll happen again. I don't know, but there's just so much unknown now on Sunday. We don't know what this offense is going to look like. Even like Bam Knight wasn't even playing when Zach was last there. They have like a new running back, basically. George Fant wasn't playing. Like they might not have Quinnen Williams, which we'll get into. So this is a much different Jets team, even from 4 weeks ago or whatever. So it's yeah, I'm very fascinated at how this game's going to go. If you were thinking the Lions might win before, maybe you're more confident in that now. I was pretty confident the Jets would win, so maybe I'm coming back down towards the middle where it'll be a close game. I don't know. It just all depends on what Zach looks like. If he comes out there and looks terrible, like they're not going to win this game. If he's okay, they can win. They beat the Bills when he was okay. They beat the Broncos and the Packers when he was okay. But yeah, there's just so many layers to this, and I don't know how it's going to go. We don't know how actually he's looked. They can say he's looked good in practice, but we have no way of seeing if that's true. I mean, they're not going to tell us if he was playing bad in practice. Have you ever heard of a coach like being like, you know what? He had a couple really bad days in practice this week, but we still believe in him. Like that's not something, especially Saleh, is ever going to say. So,
you mentioned the game plan, and that's interesting because when Zach Wilson was the quarterback, LaFleur is going through the process of putting together the game plan, what they're going to do. And I'm sure the idea was we're going to be conservative. We're not going to throw it that much. And we saw how that played out. But the way they've been running this offense, I mean, I won't say Mike White's been slinging it because he's fairly conservative with his throws and he takes what the defense gives him, but there's been a lot of pass attempts. So right now on Friday, as you're going into this game and you've been game planning all week long, you kind of have to go with what you've set up, right? Like if LaFleur was thinking in his head, oh, Mike White's going to throw it 35 times on Sunday, it's really hard in a day to suddenly be like, okay, no, we need to limit Zach to 25 or 20 passes. I mean, so it feels like Zach's going to at least have the plays there to shine if he can.
Yeah. I mean, this was always this, the talk was if they were ever going to bring him back, like the idea that they would bench Mike White for him, the Lions game was when they had to do it kind of thing. If they wanted to if their goal was to make the playoffs or whatever. And still, because you have the Lions, you have the Jaguars back to back, short notice, two teams that are, as good as the Lions are playing, they have one of the worst defenses. I think they are second to last in yardage allowed. I think Football Outsiders has them as the worst team against the other team's number one receiver. So in theory, a good opportunity for Garrett Wilson. But again, they have some talent on defense still. They have Aiden Hutchinson. They have some pass rush. They have Jeff Okudah, and the secondary is a guy they drafted pretty highly. They don't scare you, but, they also probably aren't scared of Zach Wilson at the same time. So, and Zach Wilson, as you well know, has been the worst quarterback in the league when pressured. So, the fact that he's been getting the first team reps, at least if not all week, most of the week, means that maybe they don't have to completely change their game plan kind of thing like you were talking about. But at the same time, they probably went in this week thinking we're going to be able to throw it a lot in the Lions. And now they might have to go back to the formula they used in those games they won with Zach Wilson at quarterback, where it was try and get the ball out of his hands quickly, run the ball until, you wear them out and run the clock out. And that's you're probably going to see Bam Knight. This probably, for people who are in the fantasy playoffs, like Bam Knight is going to get a lot of opportunity on Sunday, I would imagine, unless the Jets fell behind, which if you're falling behind against the Lions and you're not making the playoffs, no matter how good they've been playing, like if you're falling behind early against the Lions, they're going to be in a really tough spot here. And they need to win 3 out of 4 games, I think. And, their chances probably just got reduced. If Zach Wilson can live up to his potential, which, as we were talking about before we got on here, until we see him look like a good quarterback, we have to assume he's not one. So he has not shown that he's a good quarterback yet. He's shown flashes. He has the arm talent, the mobility, all that stuff. So there's some elements they can change with him in there that they didn't have with Mike White or whatever. But I'd say their chances are reduced that they make the playoffs as long as Zach is at quarterback. That's just the reality.
Yeah, and that reality can change, obviously, based on how he looks on Sunday. This could go a lot of different directions, right? Like, he could come out and be bad, and they win anyway. And then maybe that's, I don't know what the best case scenario here is, Zach, because, I guess the best case scenario is that Zach Wilson, the guy you took with the number 2 overall pick, comes out, looks brilliant on Sunday. Yeah. They win the game. Because of the short week, he gets another start against Jacksonville. He's great again. And then, okay, Zach's our franchise quarterback. That's the best case scenario.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like at this point, a lot of fans would be like, we want Mike White to be the guy. And so, but we also want to make the playoffs. So for that segment of the fan base, the best case scenario is probably Zach doesn't play well, but they still manage to win this game. And then Mike White is allowed to come back when healthy, play, and be the guy. I don't know, man. No matter what happens here, it feels like it's just going to create more questions than answers. This news.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think they knew that. I should say the thing that Saleh said was that they could have taken it up till game time, but they decided for the sake of Mike White, they were just going to declare him out now and just establish Zach as a starter on Sunday.
That's probably good for Zach too. Yeah, I think that's probably the right idea. Yeah.
Yes, although I don't know. It's a weird spot. We talked about this a little before the pod, and I think I've seen some of it on Twitter and stuff. And we probably should have done a better job of hammering this, honestly, in the press conference. But he was cleared to play on Sunday against the Bills. Went back in the game, played well, but I mean, who knows if that made it worse or whatever, because he wasn't cleared for contact the rest of the week. He still hasn't been technically.
It's the same doctors, right? The same doctors that are there on Sunday are there today. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I would imagine the NFL Players Association may have some thoughts, but
yeah, I'm going to be very curious to see how this plays out. I need to go back and read the transcript of everything Robert Saleh said. But yeah, and I did find it interesting, and I guess this is a thing, but I hadn't really thought about it as much. But he was saying that Mike White was doing everything he can to get cleared, so he was getting second opinions from all kinds of doctors, and he couldn't get it in time, kind of thing. So I don't know. That's an interesting part of this too. He obviously in his mind was going to play no matter what, but now that was taken away from him, and it's gonna be tough. I mean, you kind of touch on this a little bit, but not to get 5 steps ahead. But like you said, the best case scenario is that Zach, for the Jets, as an organization, is probably that Zach goes out and has 2 great games, and then they can say he's the starter the rest of the year and going into next year. And then all of a sudden you I don't know, maybe you franchise tag Mike White and try and trade him for something because he showed enough to like teams that need a quarterback. Maybe they would like, it's kind of what the Eagles did with Nick Foles. Although I think they eventually pulled the tag off or what, I forget how that played out. And then he signed with the Jaguars, but I don't know. It's they're in a very interesting spot. They're probably fascinated to find out here who's going to be their guy next, because the quarterback is obviously the biggest question for a team with a lot of talent. So Zach can prove that he's the guy these next 2 weeks, but I also know if it's fair to even expect him, if the goal is to reset him, to expect him to like fix all of his problems in that short of a time.
The other thing, and you touched on this too, but I think it's worth a little extra. He has to win back his teammates here too. Like we all heard,
Yes.
We saw Elijah Moore demand a trade. We heard Garrett Wilson's comments. And then over the last 3 weeks, I mean, LaFleur just yesterday, you guys asked him, what do you see about Elijah Moore right now? And he said, his smile is back.
Yeah.
And like that, I mean, let's be honest, that's because of Mike White, right? Like,
yeah.
So Zach has to play well on Sunday, play well enough to win and look like a franchise quarterback, I guess. But he also has to win back this receiving core that kind of like walked away, like they've outwardly, well, probably not Corey Davis because that's kind of, the guy he targets the most, but Elijah and Garrett have kind of shown that they're not fans of his. So he has to win that back. And that may be the toughest thing of all, I feel like at this point, although targets go a long way, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the big problems, that they weren't getting the ball, or when they were, it wasn't in like position to succeed. I mean, we've been high on Garrett Wilson all year, like as a podcast, but I think the league has caught on to how good there's a lot of attention on how good Garrett Wilson is now. And if you're not getting that guy the ball, like they even, and I think it was fair. Like I was confused when they didn't get him the ball in the beginning of that Vikings game. And then he wound up with 15 targets that day. So it's like, in retrospect, like he got the ball as much as anybody in the NFL that week. But like, it's like, you got to give this guy the ball every play, like manufacture touches for him. Like, is Zach Wilson going to be able to move beyond his first read? Is he going to be able to check down when he has to? Is he going to complete those passes when they're there? Can he get the ball to Garrett and let him do stuff after the catch? Will he target Elijah Moore? Because there clearly was something off between those guys. And yeah, I mean, the lasting image of Zach Wilson's, almost career with the Jets now is that quote where he said no when he was asked if he let down the defense, and it clearly like resonated in the locker room. And guys at first guys were like trying to like act like that wasn't a thing, and then CJ Uzomah, I found it interesting. He went on like a national like radio or podcast or something, and he like told his like the behind the scenes of what he dealt with, and he said how he texted Zach the next day, like I think what you said kind of rubbed some guys the wrong way. You might want to like apologize to the team or something. Like, so clearly, even if they want to deny it, I mean, I'd heard that there were guys that were really upset with what he said or frustrated or whatever. And I think he's had to earn a lot of that back, and he's had to do it while watching, as we've talked about, the team just rally around Mike, not only on the field, but just like, it's like as if they're obsessed with him. They're all wearing his shirt. They're, I saw some players calling him the King of New York. Like I was looking, I'm sure Zach has had this when he's had good games in the past, but Mike White posted something on Instagram, and I'm always fascinated at like when you go into the comments on a player's Instagram, like after a game, and it's like all his teammates like saying King of New York, Mike fucking White. And it's all his teammates just like going crazy. And that locker room like loves Mike White. I'm not saying they don't like Zach. I've said that all year. I don't know that they don't like him, but he has to win back their trust, both as in terms of his performance and the way he handles himself when he's in front of a podium. And but he has a lot on him. He's done a good job when he's we talked to him this week. Didn't really say much. We talked to him after he got benched. He was pretty good, and said that he messed up and all that stuff. So if he has a bad game on Sunday, how's he going to handle it? Also, is another factor to consider.
Yeah. Should we move on to some other stuff regarding this game? And we had a rundown built before this news drop. So you mentioned Hutchinson. So I feel like that's a good little transition with Garrett too. Numbers came out this week for odds for defensive and offensive rookie of the year. And obviously the Jets have been right in the thick of this thing all season long, from week to week with the rookie of the week awards, and Bam won it this week to add one more notch to the belt. But
Jets Twitter
defensive rookie of the year, Sauce, huge favorite, -500 this week. But Aiden Hutchinson, of course, the Lions edge rusher, who, there were thoughts at some point when the Jets were trying to figure out where they were going to be drafting that he was a guy they would consider. He's plus 500. And then Seahawks cornerback Tariq Woolen, he is plus 600. And then on the offensive side of things, Garrett is leading the way, which to me, this is the amazing thing, is that I think there was a point this season, maybe a month into the season, maybe 5 weeks, that Breece Hall would have been the guy right there, right? Like Breece Hall is your favorite for rookie of the year. He goes down with an injury and Garrett's still there. So maybe they'd be running 1 and 2 if Breece hadn't gotten hurt. But Garrett Wilson plus 175. Christian Watson, the Green Bay receiver, plus 300. Kenneth Walker, Seahawks running back, plus 300. And then Chris Olave, of course, Garrett's college teammate, plus 550 with the Saints. The Jets rookies continue to just show it. And now, they're the betting choice as well.
Yeah, I mean, if the season ended today, I think they would probably both win or be close. I would say that I think Garrett is almost more likely to win right now because Dameon Pierce is out for a few weeks. He was like the main competition. Kenneth Walker has been injured. I don't think he did much against the 49ers last night. Chris Olave maybe would be the biggest competition for Garrett, but I think Garrett's been flashier. I think more people are talking about Garrett Wilson right now, and that's a big factor. So I think if Garrett Wilson keeps it up, I mean, we'll see how he plays with Zach. I think he's close to a lock. Not a lock. Okay, that's overstating it, but I think he's the front runner. Like if you're asking me right now, and then Sauce is also the front runner. The interesting thing I'm curious to see with that is, Tariq Woolen, I think, is the real competition for him. I don't think it's as much Hutchinson. But like if these voters look at the counting stats more than like the analytics and stuff, Tariq Woolen has 6 interceptions. So I'm going to be very fascinated to see how the voting plays out with that, because Jets fans would riot if Sauce Gardner does not win, but it also wouldn't shock me if Woolen wind up getting more votes just because he has more interceptions. And I think Sauce is a better player and having a better year, but he has 2 interceptions, I think. So it's gonna be fascinating. I mean, at the very least, everybody should be excited that they're in this position where you have arguably the 2 best rookies in a class. Like that never happens. I wonder if that's ever happened where one team won both awards. I can't imagine it has.
Yeah, and the other guys who have been such big contributors who won't win the award. It was an incredible draft by Joe Douglas. We've talked about it plenty, and it continues to show. And it's the reason this team is where they are. All right, let's move things forward to this game a little bit. And actually, Marissa, you know what? We should take a break first, right? Let's take a quick break. Then we'll talk more about the Lions game. We'll do our picks. We'll have much more here on the Can't Wait podcast.
In baseball, what team won the first World Series? Play Sports Trivia Star now and prove your knowledge. Sports Trivia Star is a free mobile trivia game that tests your knowledge in basketball, football, soccer, and baseball. Choose which sport you know the best to test your knowledge. It sounds simple, but the questions increase in difficulty as you progress. Collect a bonus every day you play more. In addition, you'll have an opportunity to test your general sports knowledge with a question of the day from a random sports category. I love playing trivia, so this is so cool because honestly, I don't know much about geography or world history, but sports, that's my area of expertise, so this is so cool. If you like sports like I do, you'll love Sports Trivia Star. Download it today to challenge yourself. Just go to the Apple or Google store and search for Sports Trivia Star. Download Sports Trivia Star for free today and get ready to flex your brain muscles.
All right, let's get into this, the game itself a little bit. And we've talked about it through the podcast so far, but the Lions team, this is a team that started the season 1-6. They've won 5 of 6. They're the hottest team in the NFL. And while the Jets are talking about making the playoffs and what they need to do and, controlling their own destiny and all that stuff, you know what? They're having the same conversations in Detroit right now as far as this team has come, that if they continue to play the way they have, this is a team that has a shot to get into the playoffs at 6-7 right now. Now, here's the thing. They, I just completely lost my train of thought, but
it happens.
When you look at Seriously. When you look at the Jets and what they've been doing, they've gone the wrong way the last 2 weeks, right? Losing 2 in a row, whereas the Lions are thriving. And we thought at one point we'd get to this game and it wouldn't really matter for the Lions. The Lions would be in a position where they're looking ahead to the draft and all of that stuff. And instead, it almost has a playoff type feel because of where these two teams are.
Yeah. By the way, just a fact check earlier, we were trying to figure out when the bowl game was. It was his freshman year, and it was the Idaho Potato Bowl. So that was all the way back in 2018
against Michigan.
Against Western Michigan. So it was a long time ago. Sorry, what was the question? I was thinking about that.
We thought this game was going to be the Jets trying to get to the playoffs against a team that wasn't in it anymore. Instead, it feels like kind of a playoff game.
Yeah, especially because the NFC playoff picture is so like muddled, and the Giants don't look very good. The Seahawks are falling apart. Washington's playing better, but I think the Lions are like the scariest of those teams fighting for a wild card spot, honestly, especially because Jared Goff, I think he's completed like 70% of his passes over the last like 5 games. He hasn't thrown an interception, I think, in 4 games. He's famously not very good when he's pressured or in bad weather. And it's going to be like in the 30s, I think, on Sunday. So that does favor the Jets, though. If Quinnen Williams isn't playing, the Lions have the Jets have called it the best offensive line in the league. I think Saleh said it's them and the Eagles. Penei Sewell has like really lived up to his talent. They have Jamal Williams has scored more touchdowns, I think, than anybody in the league. The receivers are like very, very interesting, especially with Jameson Williams in the mix. You don't really know what you're getting from him, but he's a speed demon. So you have him on one side, you have DJ Chark, who's very fast on the other side, and then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who probably gets open better than almost any receiver in the league, and he's in the slot. So you have Michael Carter the second on him, who he's a solid player. I think he's been more up and down than the guys on the outside. So I'm very curious to see if Amon-Ra, if he comes out and he starts getting all these catches and making these big plays, if they start adjusting we keep 2 guys on the island and we don't move them. Like, would they put DJ Reed on him? Like, how would they adjust to the outside? Another fact, like Brandon Eccles is probably not going to play this week, or maybe Saleh declared him out. I was a little distracted by the Zach Wilson news. So Bryce Hall will be active on Sunday, I imagine, for the first time. He's an outside corner. He hasn't played all year, though. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how Jeff Ulbrich adjusts to that offense, because it's an explosive, talented group that has played very well. And especially if Quinnen Williams isn't playing, we're really going to find out like the truth about the depth and talent of this defense. They can't do a lot of the things they like to do without Quinnen in there, because he's such a force and you have to double and triple team him. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see, can Bryce Huff make the same impact when Quinnen's not in there? Can JFM step up? Can Carl Lawson play up to his contract? Like, this is a talented group that's all we've been talking about. We're going to find out how much of that has to do with Quinnen Williams and how much are they talented on their own, right, too.
Do you think that if Quinnen's out, do they have to blitz more, or do they try to still get to the quarterback without blitzing?
It's a good question. I mean, if they really don't like the blitz and they kind of stick to that. And I mean, you saw what happened. I think it was the Bengals game where they were blitzing and Quinnen got pissed off and yelled at Aaron White-Cotton and all that's the whole viral thing. But I don't know. They're going to have to find a way to get pressure on Goff, because if you give Goff time, and you can say this for a lot of quarterbacks, but he can make all the throws. So if you give Goff time, he's really good. And so if the Jets aren't getting pressure, which, they've started off games not getting pressure lately, like in the first drive or two. And so that's going to be a very interesting thing to see how they handle that. And I don't really know. I don't really have an answer. I still lean towards them probably not blitzing and trying to get the natural pressure. But if it's not there, if you're not getting the penetration, you have to be creative and find a way to get Goff on the ground, or at least pressured and frantic. And right now, without Quinnen, that becomes a lot harder. So that's going to be a really big storyline on Sunday.
Yeah, Goff last week against Minnesota, the same Minnesota team that obviously just beat the Jets the week before, 27-39, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, this is a guy at one point that we thought was one of the great young quarterbacks in the league. And then obviously it went south in LA, and then he ends up in Detroit, which felt like being kind of sent, right? Like, that's it. You're off to Detroit. That's it for you. Yep. But here come the Lions. So it is kind of a cool story, like not for the Jets fans right now getting ready for this game, but in general, Jared Goff's reemergence here with Detroit this season has been kind of a cool storyline in the NFL. All right, so they've won 5 of 6. They also beat the Giants at the Meadowlands on November 20th. So they're familiar. And I think they even in their post-game locker room last week, I heard they were talking about that, the fact that we know how to win at the Meadowlands. So what do you think the atmosphere is like at the Meadowlands, Zach?
Oh man, it's gonna be
Should be
very
electric,
fascinating.
right?
It should be, yeah. I especially thought with Mike White, his fan base loved him so much. But now I'm very curious to see what the energy's like if Zach Wilson comes out there and has a stinker first drive or something. Like, are they going to boo him again? Like they were booing him.
I will say this
time.
to Jets fans. Yeah, and I would say this to Jets fans: if he stinks the first drive, I think you have to pick him up at that point. Like if anything, you need to cheers at. You know what I mean? Like
he is going to be the quarterback for the. He's going to be their quarterback for 4 quarters on Sunday. So, yeah,
right. Like if you want to boo him in the 4th quarter, if he stunk for 3 quarters, like go for it. But I think early in this game, if you want this team to be successful, like Zach Wilson needs the support of everyone.
Absolutely. I will say, if you want the crowd to get excited, we were kind of joking about this before the pod, but I do wonder if they'll elevate Chris Streveler on Sunday just to have like something like different. I mean, they wouldn't play him over Joe Flacco, even if the fans think they should. But I don't know, like if they need a guy to get a QB sneak or something, like I think Streveler would be pretty good at it. So I don't know, something to think about. I don't know if they will do that because they might be a little lighter in the secondary. They did just cut Will Parks, which we didn't get to ask Robert Saleh about that because we were a little distracted. It felt kind of strange because he played such a key role on special teams and stuff. So they are a little light in the secondary. So I imagine they'll elevate a defensive back, but I don't know. I'd at least consider Streveler.
All right, so big picture before we get to the picks. This was actually going to be a big chunk of this podcast before the news broke, but the Jets' path to the playoffs. You wrote a great story kind of breaking it down this week, Zach, and talking about the 4 teams that are involved and how they impact each other and tiebreakers and all of it. Obviously, it's the Jets, the Chargers, the Patriots, and the Dolphins. The Dolphins a game up right now, but those other 3 teams, it all comes down to tiebreakers depending on what happens. And we've said like the Jets control their destiny, right? If they win out, although in theory, none of these teams are going to play each other. So everyone, well, except the Lions, but they could win out. The Patriots could win out. The Dolphins could win out. And like the Jets are going to be sitting there with 11
all
wins.
Of that is highly unlikely, obviously, but yeah, it's
right. And not going to playoffs.
They technically don't control it. When I was writing this story, I thought of a Chip Kelly quote from when he was with the Eagles, where somebody asked, like the Eagles were like fighting for the playoffs at the end of his first year, I think it was. And somebody asked him, like, you guys control your own destiny. Like, how important are the games? And he's like, that's inaccurate. Like, nobody controls their own destiny. Destiny's predetermined. So there's nothing we can do about it. And I always like that quote because that's such an overused phrase this time of the year.
Yeah.
Because the reality is like the odds of depending on how many games are left, the odds of you winning all of them is pretty slim. So you could say, yeah, if we just go out and win all of them, but no, you're relying on other teams losing. You're relying on, things going your way. And if you make the playoffs because it was predetermined that you were going to make the playoffs. So
yeah. So when you look at the schedules, right?
Yeah.
The Jets, obviously Lions, Jaguars, Seahawks, Dolphins. The Dolphins is obviously the one that stands out there. Yeah. But then when you look at the other teams, the Patriots, Raiders, you feel like they win. Bengals feels like they're going to lose that one. Then Dolphins, Bills, that's a brutal way to end the season. They could lose both of those. So even though that's the scariest team in this mix, right? Just because of the tiebreaker and the fact of how much it would hurt because they swept the Jets. And if they end up tied with them and they lose because of those 2 terrible performances, it's really going to sting. But I mean, anybody who's watched this Patriots team, yes, the defense is pretty good, but Mac Jones week in and week out continues to show us that he's kind of a mediocre quarterback at best. Yeah. I could see 2-2. I could see 1-3, to be honest, for this Patriots team down the stretch against those teams. So I think if that's one where like Jets go 3-1, don't worry about the Patriots. And then the Chargers,
they have an easy schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. That one's a little kind of scarier. And then that brings into the point that maybe the Jets are better off, like, having to beat the Dolphins and beating the Dolphins, winning that tiebreaker and getting it over them. And then you don't have to worry about the Chargers. There's lots of ways to look at it, but I think after this week, we'll have a little more clarity.
as part of that story, I played out each of the teams that are competing with schedules, and I asked our Chargers writer Dan Popper and our Patriots writer Chad Graff to predict those two teams 3 games, and then I played out the Dolphins schedule, and I think there's a legitimate possibility that the Dolphins, Jets, Patriots, and Chargers are all 9-7 going into the last week, a legitimate chance at all 4 of them. So it could go in so many different directions. The Jets can't tie with the Patriots or they don't make it. I think at that point, I think the Chargers might have the tiebreaker. They don't play each other, so that it goes to conference record, and then, I think it goes to common opponents after that. But I think I said this earlier in the week. I just have a feeling that last week Dolphins is going to be winning in or losing you're out kind of situation, and which will make it exciting and stressful because I know the Jets haven't always done an amazing job when they go to Miami, so it's kind of like one of their locations that they struggle in. So it's it's these next 4. It's exciting. It's exciting that this is basically the playoffs for the Jets. This is the most important 4-game stretch they've had in a long, long time. Especially because if you I've said this, I think this team is good enough with Quinnen Williams. If he's not there, it's different. But with Quinnen Williams in there, and I think Mike White, a quarterback, I think this team can be competitive in the playoffs depending on who they're going against. These next 4 weeks are gonna be very fascinating, and as we've talked about, I'm gonna be very, very curious to see how the fans feel if they fall short. Even if it's not out of the question that they get 10 wins and fall short. That would be depressing. But I'm very curious to see what the fan reaction is at the end of the year if they fall short with a winning record.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting, especially if it's 10. That's crazy. But then
especially 10.
What can you do? We won 10 games.
Exactly. So maybe you feel a little better about it at that point. Yeah.
All right. With that, let's move on to our picks and welcome in our guest picker this week, Eric Goldrich. Did I get that right, Eric?
Sort of. Goldrich, opposite of Silverport. Goldrich. There you go. Hey.
Goldrich. Sorry. I typoed don't be sorry. Rundown because I was scrambling.
Goodrich is just as good as Goldrich. It's not as good, but it's pretty good. Good morning, guys.
All right. So this has become our new thing on the show is you got to show us what jersey you're sporting there.
So before I show you, really quick, I have a story about how every Jets jersey I've ever gotten in my life is bad luck. And it starts all the way back to John Abraham when I got John Abraham when I was a kid. And then he got traded, I think, that offseason. And then I got Jim Leonard I loved Jim Leonard, the safety. And then 2 weeks later, tore his ACL, never played another Jets game again. Then I got Leonard Williams. I got Leonard.
Well, yeah.
And then Leonard got traded to the Giants. And then right after this season, I ordered this jersey, and right after it landed in my doorstep, the next week he asked for a trade. It's I have the worst darn luck with any Jets jersey. So I'm done. Man. Maybe I'll get Zach Wilson, and it'll help a lot of Jets fans, and he'll be out for.
I would say the best path is just getting obscure guys, because I think that's fun, because then you can be like, I didn't think he was going to be there a while, and it's I have this I don't know, I can't think of a good obscure one, but
Will Parks would have been a bad one to get also. That would have been a bad one.
True. Or go historic. That's the always the
historic is
like
Wayne
Corbett is always a good
Corbett's good. Corbett's a good one.
All right. So the other thing I always like to ask the listeners is, how long have you been a Jets fan, and how did it all start?
My parents really didn't give a damn about football growing up, but my childhood buddy was a huge Jets fan. And I actually got him a John Abraham jersey also when we were in fifth grade. I don't know how I did that. Mom, please get my friend a jersey for Christmas. I don't know how that actually happened. And it just started there. Fell in love with them. And obviously it was a weird road with when I started becoming conscious, at Pennington, and, that was fun. I remember that game versus Miami. I think it was, I don't even know, 2004. I forgot what year that was, but it's been a wild ride, obviously, for all of us miserable Jets fans. And, 2009, 2010 was fantastic. Although we didn't make it, obviously, but it was still a lot of fun. And then 2015, of course, that was the 10-win season that didn't get us into the playoffs. So that will be really depressing, guys. If we do get 10 wins and don't get in, it'll be a PTSD to 2015. And then I met my now wife in 2016, and I was a Jets fan, and she's watched me be miserable and the Jets be awful for so long. And I was joking with her and my mom. I'm like, I don't know if it's better to be so bad and just expect a loss, or think you're really good and lose. I don't know. I don't know what's worse. It's because this season's been spectacular and awful all at once. It's been really weird.
That's the Jets for you. Yeah.
Yeah, that sentence I think should be like their slogan.
Spectacular and awful all at once.
Yeah.
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah,
you live in LA, right?
Yes, but I'm from New York. Well, not obviously, but I don't know why you'd be a Jets fan if you're not from New York or New Jersey. But yeah, I'm one of the very, very few Jets fans here in LA, and my buddy Jeremy is my only Jets buddy here in LA. We're texting 1,000 texts per game. So yeah, it's a lonely existence here in LA, being a Jets fan. But at least it's nice outside, so that's the positive. Yeah.
Yeah, you certainly have that as we look out on bleak weather here today in the Northeast. All right, should we get on to the picks? Here we go. So as of now, it was a rough week across the board for everybody. I don't know if you have the standings ready, Marissa, or not, but Zach, a rough 0-3. I was 1-2. Marissa was 1-2. And listener was Joe was 1-2. So Zach has fallen back a bit. I think the actual numbers on this for our standings might be wrong because I was just putting this together on the fly. But
Joe,
that
it wasn't Joe last week. It was Frederick from Sweden.
Yeah, we had the same picks.
Oh, this is
yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah, and the Jets lost by
So basically, if you're looking at this on YouTube, I messed it up, but the picks are correct. Ignore everything else on the screen because it was Frederick.
Yeah.
Just not a lot of wins across the board, basically. We can sum it up by saying that.
Yes.
It was ugly. And Zach who has been in the hunt, was the worst of all. But that said, the listeners are still hanging in there in front, although with a losing record now. But that means you get to go first, Eric. So go ahead. Tell us what you got.
Wow, pressure. All right. So I choose 3 games, right? I choose 3 games and make my over under. All right. Well, okay.
Based on the Bet MGM, because this is presented by Bet MGM, based on those lines. If your lines that you have are a little off, we'll correct them along the way.
Oh, I have to choose their lines. Oh.
No, it's okay. Whatever you got, we'll go with.
Okay. All right. Let's live on the edge. I only understood over under about a year ago, by the way. My whole life I didn't really understand it. But now I get it. So
I will have to say I was very similar. Like, in my sports fandom, that took me a while to get that. So
yeah, don't come with me to Vegas. We're gonna lose all our money. That's all I got to say. But we'll have fun. Okay, I'm gonna go. All right, I'm gonna go Kansas City. I'm gonna go Kansas City. Let's do. Kansas City versus Houston is -14 ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, is that?
I don't think that's ridiculous. That was a potential of mine too.
Okay, I'll go Kansas City -14. I don't know how far different that is than MGM.
No, that's the same.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, but we're on the same. Me and MGM. I'm gonna also choose Sam the Man Darnold, the ex-Jet. I'm gonna go with old Sam. I'm gonna go. Let's go. Sam and Carolina. Go -3.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow! Look at me at MGM. I had no idea. This is amazing. And then this is going to be a mistake because the last time I bet on the Jets, it was versus Denver when Tebow was on the Broncos and we lost, and that was actually in Vegas, which is funny, and I lost $100. But I'm going to bet on the Jets. I'm going to bet on the Jets. Go -3. Let's go, Zach. Let's rock and roll.
I think that line dropped because of the quarterback news. I'm seeing Jets +1.5.
Yeah.
So,
Jets +1.5.
Yes. So you're still taking it.
I have to believe that if you're a Jets fan, you're just blindly leading or following, I should say.
I like it.
The Jets. If you got the Jets at +1.5, which is what it was until an hour ago, good on you, I guess, for anybody out there who was able to get that, because we'll see. Or if you got the Lions at the bat.
Yeah.
So anyway, I am we are moving on. Zach, you're next.
All right. I'm going to go with the Eagles -9 against the Bears. I think the Eagles are just rolling right now, and the Bears are not very good. So that one shouldn't be too hard. Let's do the man, there's some weird ones. I'll go Bengals -3.5 against the Bucks. I think the Bucks are a mess.
Those are my first two picks. Annoying.
You know what? Let's let's see what else we got here. I'll go Cowboys -4 against the Jaguars.
It's only -4? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is happening the second week in a row that I've had a lot of similar picks. I also had Eagles -9 and Bengals -3.5. And my third pick is going to be the Fighting Baker Mayfield's
Nice. I thought about that one.
7 versus the Packers. So let's see if Baker can pull it out at Lambeau.
The Fighting Baker Mayfield.
All right. I have Vikings -3.5 versus Colts. I just feel like the Vikings, after that loss last week, bounced back a little bit, and the Colts are bad. This one, I'm going to take the Browns -3 versus the Ravens, just because the Ravens quarterback situation and the mess that's there. And we'll see, Marissa, if the Browns can pull that one out at home. And then finally, I'm not picking the Jets, but this pick is for the Jets, taking the Titans +2.5 at the Chargers to help out the Jets in their quest to make the playoffs. So those are my picks. I feel like at this point, it's like me and Marissa are trying to figure out who's going to finish last. And then Zach and the listeners are going to figure out who's going to win this thing. But there's a big gap in between. But we'll see. Eric, thank you so much for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Keep rocking and rolling. You guys are awesome.
Oh, thanks, man.
All right.
Thanks,
and
Eric.
thanks everybody for joining us. It's always cool to react to breaking news, especially when you already have the podcast scheduled and you can kind of do it on the fly. So
you guys are lucky or unlucky. I don't know what.
Yeah,
seriously.
Eric, what's your take from a fan
on what's going on
the quarterback, Zach Wilson starting this week?
I couldn't believe that my buddy Jeremy texted me that Adam Schefter. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I just hope that they really don't hate Zach and they're going to rally around him and play for him, with him, and care, because, man, I mean, the storylines that have been swirling since Mike came in and how much they love him. Like, they obviously don't love Zach as much as they love Mike. Like, that's obvious, but I hope that they like him enough. Like, did he buy them JetBlue tickets hopefully in the past week, and make them feel better? Like, it
is Christmas season, the quarterbacks are. I wonder what quarterbacks get in those offensive lineman gifts this time of year. That's an interesting one.
I feel like Zach needed to up the game and give his receivers gifts too. But.
Yeah.
Hopefully the gift he gives them is the ball. On Sunday. I think he's going to have to just distribute and get the ball to people. And if he doesn't do that and he keeps on missing checkdowns, then it's going to be brutal on that. And Streveler, let's go Streveler. If Zach can't make those throws, but I hope. I mean, I'm blindly hoping.
Yes.
Blindly hoping.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. We will be back at you early next week for a full recap of this game, full breakdown. I'm sure that episode is going to be 90% Zach Wilson breakdown. So join us again early next week for the recap of the Lions and the Jets. Hopefully the Jets get this win, stay right in the middle of the playoff mix. If you want to join The Athletic, you can do it for $2 a month for 12 months. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait to get that deal. Great deal, great time of year to gift a subscription to The Athletic too. Running out of time, need something on the fly. Gift to The Athletic is easy and everybody would love it. So get that out there and we'll talk to everybody soon.